All right, welcome to the EUphoria Podcast. It's the podcast about all things EULCS. I'm your host, Drakos. Now, unfortunately, Deficio will not be here with us this week. Something about us being plebs, him being amazing, standard Deficio stuff. Worry not, he will be back in the future. We are now a video podcast. You can see that live on YouTube, get a little bit of extra bonus content. Otherwise, we're still available on SoundCloud and iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks, of course, to everyone who gave us feedback on the first episode. It was what we'd like to consider a success. Someone said we need a new table. We're working on it. The set is still a work in progress. You're going to notice some empty picture frames. So if you have any pictures that you've taken with us, or funny photoshops, or really anything, we're looking for pictures to fill up the background. Let us know. Let us know what you've got. Our guests today are going to be Vedius, wonderful shoutcaster, Nocturne, One Trick, and all-around mediocre player, if we're honest. But he might say something otherwise. And of course, joining him in mediocrity is the Schalke jungler, Amazing, and they're going to be here in a moment. The topics for the day are funneling compositions. Are they good? Are they bad? How do they fit into the world of League of Legends? And of course, the state of Schalke, no fear. So, in the spirit of getting things kicked off, I'd like to welcome our guest, Vedius. Amazing. Come in.
I just take my head on this.
What you do? And I'm dropping the cables here, I think.
I'm losing your cable. All right, well, welcome, friends.
Thank you.
Hello.
So, there's so much I need to ask both of you.
Apparently we're both mediocre. How does it make you feel to be as mediocre as me?
Well, I said hold on. He's mediocre by pro player standards. You're mediocre by average player standards.
See, I'm not even worth it that you pour me water, at this point.
Vedius poured his own water before the show.
I didn't.
You were a caster. I don't have
but
to
I just
spoil
expect
you.
these things to happen, when I'm invited on the show as a guest,
I'm just saying, you were a caster last year. I don't have to spoil you. I don't have to treat you any differently.
It is true. You think you're better than us now just because you're pro?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, probably fair, but not totally the most reasonable thing. So, Vedius, how does it feel to finally be here? Deficio hard blocked you from coming on forever, but he's not here, so now you can be here.
The only reason I would ever be on this show is if he wasn't here, so we got rid of him. It's great. I'm honored to be with Maurice.
Oh, they grabbed my leg already.
Epic. So, Maurice, let's talk a little bit about your week one. You had a nice interview with Laura after game one. You won. You had some nice things to say. Your second game was
better than your first one, funnily enough.
But also a loss. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that was?
Oh, man. Honestly, I don't even know what happened. I rewatched the game, because I had to relive the pain a bit, but it's 21 minutes, we're up 8K, and then we're
Yep.
Why don't we just control bot side instead of top side? And then in 14 seconds, they rush Nash, and then...
Well, my favorite bit was I was watching the VOD, and I could see your logic. You had priority bot, right? You had a Renekton literally just pushed in the wave.
Yes.
And then your AD carry gets caught and has to flash, which is bad, but fine. And then you have priority mid, and then you're just guys, Dragon spawns in 15 seconds. Let's get vision around Drake. And then you watch Fnatic walk up mid, clear the wave, walk through 2 control wards, clear both of them, and nobody moves. You're just we're gonna get Drake, guys. We've got Drake. It's ours. I don't know why you just forgot Baron.
I mean, I did expect them to go for it, but at least thought we could fight them, bait them into it, maybe contest, but I think it doesn't work when they finish it in.
Turns out Kai'Sa's pretty good at taking Barons. Kai'Sa also pretty good at taking Barons. Well, look, you're not the only person who had a less than stellar last week. I've turned my computer audio on for the sole purpose of embarrassing Vedius.
Wait, what?
So, the thing I want to show you, Yamato, you're gonna have to bear with me because we're clipping it out as we speak. But the sumo feature, as fans of the podcast may know, we've already filmed it. And there's a special segment where someone not involved with the feature decides to talk trash, and we're gonna see how this goes. So we're gonna bring us over here. So in the midst of Yamato's victory celebration, we'll turn the volume
isn't
up.
this a spoiler? Do people know that he's won?
So it will have ideally come out by the time this is released, but that's a good point. Dang it! If you haven't seen it, Yamato wins. Rip. We'll put a spoiler warning somewhere.
Say that.
You get smacked?
Yeah, so Vedius is talking trash here in the sumo contest.
I do like to talk trash.
Yeah, he says it's the only thing Vitality's going to win this season is this, and
See,
I don't know.
I was going in convinced I had a strategy. I was like, if I rush him, then he will be caught unawares, and I will be able to defeat him.
How'd that work out for you? I guess we're gonna see. Oh my god. This moment is so good. You literally just fly. You last what? 3 seconds?
Like 3 seconds, yeah.
You motto him,
I literally just
throws
thought,
you out.
he just takes my momentum and he just moves me. I defeat myself. He just literally rolls around in a line. Oh, it was awful.
All right, well, if you haven't seen the Euphoria, first annual Euphoria Mid-Season Invitational, Sumo Invitational feature, it should be out now on YouTube. Check it out. You can see a special little bit of content where Vedius gets
My casting was great in that, by the way.
Your casting was great. There's little clips here and there of it. It was, you get the nice moment, the roly-poly, I think the definitive move.
Legendary roly-poly.
Yeah, I
He's been
don't know.
prepping that for a while.
I don't know why you decided to do it all in Welsh, but I appreciate the effort regardless.
Comedy. I can do this whole podcast in Welsh if you want.
No, I don't.
Oh,
Please.
yeah.
Unless Amazing really wants that. Unless that somehow gets him in
Nobody
the
has
spirit
trouble
of
with English, you know?
That's
Like, we don't-
that is a good point.
All right, so let's jump into the first topic. And Maurice, I think you're very qualified to talk about this, and it is funneling comps. Everyone has an opinion on the internet right now about these compositions. Most people think that they're like the worst thing ever. Whether or not they think they're OP, they think they're awful. Just Maurice, as someone who's played, I assume, against a lot of funneling comps, at least once on stage, how do you feel about them in general? How do you feel about these like Kaisa Tarek strats, Kaisa Nunu, which is what we've seen in EU, even the Nunu Karthus in other regions, or the Master Yi Tarek? What do you think about them in general?
So I do think the idea behind it is obviously pretty disgusting. Like just funneling like all the resources into one member and trying to make him as strong as possible is kind of like, you know, defying what I think of League of Legends, which is a team game, you know, because in the end you're basically playing 1v5 to a certain extent. But it's like, obviously I understand why teams are going for it, because it is effective to a certain extent, because people basically had like Juggernaut comps, you know, back in the past, or protect the AD carry comps, and now it's basically do it like in a different way where you obviously like combine them with some kind of support in mid lane, and it is pretty effective in the way that you 100% going to ensure a lot of farm onto that special carry, and you're actually ensuring that you will have a strong mid-game character, at least like one of them, you know? The only issue I have in most cases is the fact that most teams don't quite understand that just because you're playing that doesn't mean you cannot play proper silence, you know? When I see, for example, Fnatic pick it, and they picked it with Rakan and Jenna on bot lane, you know? I'm not quite sure what the intention is behind it, because you're basically picking late game, but you have no tools to get there. So you want to ensure that you get to late game and have like some kind of silence being able to play for themselves. And that's something, for example, G2 was able to execute, like at least on stage when I saw them play with Heimer.
Yeah.
And they basically like had a bottom push, and that meant that they would get bottom side priority no matter what, you know. So like the duo of Braum and Kaiser, I think they played, like was really, really safe. Whereas in other cases, for example, the Nunu and Kaiser that I played against, you know, on stage, wasn't really safe, you know, like, and it's really abusable to a certain extent. It's just like still, I think this whole notion of like, you know, like this is like, it cannot be healthy for the game for this to exist, you know?
Yeah, so you unpacked a lot of stuff there. One of the things I want to talk about is like comparing this to Juggernaut and like the play around a single carry style compositions. So why is Juggernaut just as bad as this? Like, what's really the difference here in terms of like this being bad for the game versus Juggernaut, which was, I think, generally considered okay at the time, right? Where it was all about a Kog'Maw or a single hyper carry.
I mean, for me, the main difference is simply that like there's like this jungle mid interaction that you used to have, you know, for example, like, or that you still have in a lot of comps, you know, when you, for example, play Yasuo, when you play Aurelia, you know, you play a lot around mid lane, but this, like playing around mid lane basically is like you're trying to set up ganks, you're trying to set up vision, you're trying to play intelligently. And it's not just like almost like a run it down side where you go from left to right, you know, go back to mid lane, you know. So it is just honestly pretty brain dead to a certain extent to play this way, and that's why it's unhealthy. Whereas Juggernaut, at least like it had this direct counterplay, you know, where like, okay, if we camp the Kog'Maw early on, you know, we can at least take him out of the game, maybe we can snowball hard enough, you know. Because now, especially with Braum Kaiser, for example, in most cases you're not able to contest the 2v2, you know. So that means they can actually win 2v2 early, get more farm, and it's just like, it's basically an idiot safe option, you know?
Okay, but hold on, and I want you to weigh in on this, because we saw people totally trash this comp.
Wow.
Worldwide, this comp has been trashed.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the methods, I actually, you know, Deficio talked a lot about it and we saw it from Splice's comp. They actually had a really good comp to shut that down.
Yeah.
They had Nocturne and Syndra mid, which is like...
Oh, that's in the bottom, I think.
It was not. They had Syndra mid, they had Nocturne jungle, and then they had...
Ziggs AD carry, right?
it was Ziggs AD carry.
Yeah, it was Ziggs AD carry, yeah. So they have this like insane backline dive comp, and all they had to do is the moment Nocturne hits 6 is you just camp mid. And it's super easy to do. You should be able to win that 2v2 pretty easily because Braum shouldn't be level 6 by the time Nocturne hits 6. And then you just hard camp the Kai'Sa and you one-shotter. And they still had priority bot because they had Ziggs. So they still had a pushing lane bot. They had the ability to kill mids, but instead they weren't proactive at all in the early game and they just let the Kai'Sa farm for free. And so I think my biggest issue with the funnel comp is that the responsibility isn't on you to be proactive. You just kind of have to sit and play safe and respect your opponents and be mindful.
Yeah.
Whereas your opponents, I feel like a lot of pressure is on them to be proactive. Because I think you guys did a good job of like constantly coming mid and shutting down. Like you took advantage of the fact that they had 2 supports bot, so Shen could roam as often as he wanted because your AD carry was fine, and you just hard cap mid and you killed him like 3 times. 2 of those, I would argue, was Caps just making a dumb decision, but there was definitely still...
Oh, what are you talking about? Maurice literally hid by that blue buff like a jaguar, like a predator, waiting for his time to strike.
That one was funny because they watched him go into the jungle. Really? They saw you. They had 2 wards, literally see you, they ping you, and then they don't see you leave.
Yeah, but like you have to take the blue off, no? Like
we'll take our chances. The Shen and the TF, there's no way they'll get there in time.
But it's what I think is frustrating about it is that I do agree with Maurice. I do think it's a little... I don't like the term brain dead, but it is just... it's very... I think it's not a difficult comp to play.
It's non-interactive. That's
non-interactive.
So
yeah, I think that's the best way to
That's
put it.
interesting too. So the thing that I really want to push here is like really defining this from other metas and really what makes this different and so bad. Because I mean, it's visually very different, right? But also we think about the start of Spring Split, it was literally those wait till 50-minute team fight comps every game. And I think you could argue if you were trying to play like 1-3-1 against the team fight comps or whatever, that the team fight comp was very much in the same situation as these funnel comps where they literally did not want to interact at all early to mid and just wait, right?
But the difference is with those team fight comps, you're waiting for certain item spikes, which is like 2 or 3 items. And then even though you get to this late game point, early game comps can still win. They still have loads of opportunities and there are ways in which they can play late game fights in order to come out on top. Whereas this, you're reaching a late game point much earlier than you should be. So when Kai'Sa's level 17 by 25 minutes, and the enemy Syndra's level 14, just that 3 level difference and a full item difference is the very unhealthy bit that I really don't like, because like late game is full late game.
Yeah, because the thing you said is there's early game to counterplay, but we've seen early game shut down these comps, right? So the bigger issue, is it just the clock then at the core that is the issue with the funneling comp? It's like how quickly this scales up, or is it more? Because I think the other thing that you brought up, Maurice, at the start, and I think it's something that a lot of people have kind of voiced is feeling pretty shitty, honestly, as like a player to watch this or as a player to play this, is like Juggernaut, people had agency and got to do stuff until the Kog'Maw took off, right?
Sure.
This comp, 3 people on a team, usually at least, sole purpose is to support this one guy who just gets to be the biggest ego player of all time for the remainder of the game, right?
That's fair.
So how do you guys personally feel, Maurice, from your perspective as a player, I mean, Vedius as a viewer and as a caster, like, do you think that it is okay to have something in League of Legends, competitive or otherwise, where people have to be just hard supports for a single carry, multiple people?
I mean, it can be, and I don't think it's, like, that whole notion is not that unhealthy, because even, like, in a Juggernaut comp, you had, like, for example, like, you play Nunu jungle, you know? Technically, you're running around, you do nothing, you know? So it's still the same concept, but I do think that, like, you know, like, it's basically almost like, I don't want to say abuse the system, but obviously there's a reason why it works to a certain extent, you know, because turrets are not that squishy early, you know, like you at least have to wait a bit until they become squishy, you know, like, so that they have almost like 5 minutes of guaranteed farm in the early game, you know, so they at least can get to level 5, you know, because like obviously with funnel it's kind of like accelerated and everything like that, but you're basically like abusing a lot of things that are right now in the game, and that makes this funnel comp actually like worthwhile playing, you know. For example, when we saw the banner coming in from Singed, you know, like in the finale game, like we could not contest this mid wave and they could just run it down mid lane at some point, whereas we basically played 2 sides properly like throughout the game, and like play properly until one mistake happens, and then they just take over and they completely outright win the game. You know? So it basically almost like puts more focus on things that are abusive within the game, like by just using that strategy, you know.
So I'm curious, do you guys think that they're OP, Vedius? Like, is this something that is overpowered? I mean, obviously, so just in terms of like success, the comp has not been incredibly successful, right? And I think a lot of that is because people know or have learned in scrims how to play against it. Karthus, for instance, is 0% win rate in LCK currently. We're recording this on Thursday. 33% win rate for Yi. The game he did win was versus a Karthus. 2 out of 3 games have been Kai'Sa wins here, actually, so it's pretty successful in EU, and it didn't really show up at all in NALCS. Taric being banned 4 games was the only significant indicator that this might get played in an ALCS. So as you know, we can call it like toxic or not fun to play against, or maybe not good for the game. Regardless, is it actually overpowered though? Like, is this actually something that needs to be nerfed from a balance perspective?
I mean, I think it does. I think
yeah. For me, the biggest issue is, I mentioned, I don't like the fact that you can be level 17 by 25 minutes into the game. Personally, that feels bad, man. What was it, 300 CS by 20 minutes? I think that was pretty.
Yeah. Cap's got a record, then the next game, Perks beat that record.
So that aspect of it, I don't particularly like, and I think is pretty strong, because again, I think it puts the onus on the opposition to be proactive, which is, I think, so for me, what I like is, when one team picks like an early game focus comp, like a 1-item spike comp that's all about being, like Misfits used to do a lot last week,
like a lot of the 1-3-1
I'm
comps.
fine if you volunteer into that strategy and you fail to execute and things don't go well and then the enemy team outscales, fine. That I think is a choice that you make, and it doesn't work out, then fine. This situation, if they go, well, I'm picking a support and I'm now picking a carry, you have to be proactive or you lose, or you do the same thing as us and then we can team fight later and we can see who's better. And I think that forcing the other team to play like that is what I don't like. I think it just feels a little unfair.
So is it like, and then once again, so like the difference here, because you're still, for me, still comparing this like a lot to teamfight comps in spring, the difference still just feels like the nature of this style, right? In the sense that it is so clearly uninteractive, whereas even on teamfight comps, maybe you saw a little interaction.
No, but again, like I think that the biggest difference between this and a teamfight comp is teamfight comps typically specialize around 2 items, but also teamfight comps, they can group, and that is where their strength is. But they also have one of the big weaknesses, usually they can't play side lanes, because you run things like a Zia, who you can't typically send on a side lane. So Maurice could draft a composition that scale similarly well, but is actually better on the 1-3-1, or they just draft a comp that maybe it is early game focused, but they know in the 1v1 they're always going to win. So even in teamfight comps, even if it goes to 40 minutes, Maurice has a comp that has a clear win condition, the enemy team has a comp that has a clear win condition, and now it's about how do you execute best upon it. Whereas if you have Kai'Sa and you have a Singed, and you talk about Banner and Baron, they don't need to. They can completely ignore you.
They don't need to think, you know. That's basically.
They just group mid and they run, and you're
so then it is just the relative power level, because teamfight comps would also group mid and run. The difference is that they weren't.
They could be punished in other ways, right?
Yeah.
Like, and this doesn't feel like it. Once it gets to that point, it doesn't feel like that it has as many ways to punish it.
And
so
I think
in that aspect, yes, I think it should be nerfed. For me, I think it would be fine if they just made it a little bit harder to get to that late game point, so that.
Like, but how do you want to do it? You know, like the question is basically like, why is it actually worthwhile playing? You know, like, and it's because this is jungle item. You know, like obviously the attack speed item is really, really cost efficient. You know, A, then B, the jungle XP has been changed. You know, like where even if you're head of the camp now, you basically get the same amount of XP, whereas before and you couldn't. You know, so if someone was level 7 and he took a level 5 camp, he obviously got like a diminished return of investment. You know, whereas now it's like the same return. So that's basically why it is happening, and I think that's something that maybe should look into. But I'm not sure if it's actually that broken and that obviously like overpowered that you should actually look into it further, because I think more teams will come into play and understand how to counter properly and not give up Nash at 23 minutes or 21 minutes. You know, so like there are a lot of ways to go about it. You know, like but it just puts this pressure on you to not make mistakes, and I think that's completely that's somewhat unhealthy, because I think people, especially like with the meta that has evolved like in the past couple of years, I think mistakes have been happening on both sides, but whoever has been like faster back on the map, you know, played for pace better, has basically been the team that has been winning, you know. So making more mistakes shouldn't lose you the game, and I think in these comps it does.
which is tough. And talking about like how do you nerf it, how do you approach it, I think you made a lot of good points about the jungle item. The other item that feels really egregious to me is Rage Blade. This item feels like a consistent balance issue. Because Karthus has been picked too, right? And Karthus is the exception to this rule. He's the only guy who doesn't build Rage Blade on the list.
Yeah.
And Karthus hasn't seen a ton of success, at least from the regions I've watched. But like Yi and Kai'Sa both seem like almost Dota 1 style hyper carries with this item, right? Where they're literally just a ball of stats and they get to a certain point and it just doesn't matter. And they're, I think, probably the only two characters in the game that I can think of that are so strong that when they hit 3 items or 2.5 items, it's the case with Kai'Sa, because usually it's like Rage Blade, jungle item, and QSS, and she wins the game, right? At least from what we saw in EU. They're actually just unstoppable. Like they can kill anybody. It doesn't matter. If they are alive and something is there to keep them alive, they can literally kill anything, which feels to me really gross that there are characters in this game that can be 5,000, 6,000 gold behind, right, and get those 2 items like we saw at MSI. Like when a Kai'Sa came online, she can kill anybody. Or here, be snowballed into 2 items against an entire team of people with 2 items. But she's got a Lulu and a Taric, so guess what? Your entire team is dead. So are the characters an issue too, I guess is what I'm getting at? Or is it just the fact that it's so easy to funnel so many resources directly into them?
I think it's just Rage Blade, actually. Like, I think, obviously, Kai'Sa, to a certain extent, is kind of broken right now, especially the AP version of it, you know? Like, we don't have to make, like, you know, like, we don't know, like...
You don't have to dance around it. She is really strong, yes.
Kai'Sa, when she gets to this, like, you know, 2 item spike, maybe 3 item, you know, like when she has Nashes, like Rage Blade, you know, like, she doesn't even need QSS, like, have another AP item thrown in, you know, maybe Hourglass, you know, just for the sake of it, you know? Like, this champion just does too much damage and has the ability to dash on you, you know, and that makes it broken. And that's the same for he, obviously, with Taric, but he does not work with any other strategy, whereas we have seen Kai'Sa work with Braum, we have seen Kai'Sa work with Nunu, and I do think that Kai'Sa could probably work with Taric too, you know? So it's a combination of Rage Blade and the fact that Kai'Sa has this innate ability to just destroy you whenever she wants to.
She's also just, like, a good jungler too. Like, when she was released, everyone was playing her as a jungler. This champ is actually insane. Because she had 500 range, so everyone was like, you can't put her on AD carry, her range is too short. Then they buffed her range to 525, and I was like, oh, now I can play her as an AD carry. And they were like, so she can jungle and she's an AD carry. And it's just like, wait, what if we just make this champion the really strong one? Like, let's put everything into this champion. I think Rage Blade is pretty good. I was surprised when all the AD carry item changes happened and Rage Blade wasn't affected. I wonder if they were conscientious of who it affected, like outside of the AD carry position, but then I think about who else would build it, and I was like, Aatrox, Kayle, Master Yi.
I mean, you're seeing that like the meta is full of Rage Blade abusers, right? I mean, Aatrox is successful in the top lane. I don't want to say solely because of Rage Blade, but Rage Blade's a big Rage Blade Titanic Hydra is an insane combo.
So I will say though that they did make one change to Rage Blade where I do think that, like, stats-wise, it's actually not that great. It gives you like 25 AD and 25 AP, but then it scales pretty well, and then it's the passive that makes it really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just for the people who are good at abusing the double hit, right?
Yes,
Aatrox is a great abuser, Kai'Sa is a great abuser, any one of those
and
champions.
for champions that can generate the stacks are also where a lot of the damage comes from. So Kayle is generally pretty good at getting those stacks up too. Aatrox is another example.
Oh yeah, you guys, another dirty Rage Blade abuser team. Kayle.
But like basically champions that are good at getting the stacks and and can just take advantage of the scaling aspect will take advantage of Rage Blade. But like this is why I kind of, because it's only certain champions that make Rage Blade broken.
Well, it's like when Klepto was broken, right? It was like, yeah, you're still only going to take on Ezreal and Gangplank, but for those 2 champions, it's literally really nuts.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where outside of certain champions, Rage Blade isn't that amazing.
I mean, but you have to balance it, I think, for the abuse. You can't, right? Like,
yeah, but I personally have no idea how. I wouldn't, like, if you remove the passive or you change the passive, so now it's like every 3rd hit double procs the thing, that would probably make a big deal. But I honestly don't know.
I honestly don't know either. The other thing I want to talk about just to round this out is we've talked about funneling being potentially bad, something that we'd like to see get stepped away from in whatever form that takes. But strategic diversity in League of Legends, I feel like for a long time, we've had like 1-3-1 and team fight. Yeah. And those have been the 2 comps for years.
More or less.
More or less, right? And we are seeing more bot lane diversity as the predatory flies of Berlin attack me.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies, baby. You could be Piggy. But so I'm just curious if with this new meta, even if we take away funneling, do we expect to see more kind of strategic diversity outside of funneling? Do you feel like this patch is going in the right direction?
So I think a bunch of pros have already tweeted it, but I will just steal their tweets, which is I love that people can just play what they want and it can be considered meta. Back in Season 2, when I used to watch CLG EU, every game you had to ban Alistar, Irelia, and Nivea, because Snoopy was really good at Alistar jungle, and Nivea was Froggen, and Irelia was
And to be fair, that wasn't because of the way the game was balanced. That was just because individual skill carried everything.
Yeah, they were just
down
so
into.
good at those champions, and that's how it worked back in the day. You used to have to ban, I think, Ryze from Alex-ish. No one else really played Ryze. It was just his Ryze was really good. And now it feels like we're moving back into a meta where you can actually just play champions that you're good at, and they're relevant. Right, and I think like the fact that Nuke played Twisted Fate, I think is really cool.
That was pretty hype.
The fact that we saw
And Kale.
The fact that we're seeing Senkux now performing better because he's picking champions that suit him rather than what are good for the meta, I think is enabling him to see like the potential that he feels in this team. And we're also like, if Maurice wants to play tank junglers, he has the option to. If he wants to play carry junglers, he has the option
Maurice.
to.
He gets to play Camille every game right now. Don't take that away from him.
Maybe I should play her.
But I honestly think that is my favorite thing, because now we actually get to see pros who are willing to experiment and just play what they're comfortable on and succeed on it. And that is the shift that I personally am a big fan of.
So here's my question then, as a follow-up. Maurice, you get to keep this meta, but you also have to keep funneling comps. Would you do it?
I mean, I'm not even that big of a fan of the meta, you know? Like, I don't know, like this, like, I mean, everyone can play what they want, but the issue with that is too, you know, that there's gonna be this nuts situation that you're gonna find, you know, where, like, for example, hammering, you know, it's extremely oppressive in lane, there's no counterplay to it at some point, you know, and you cannot do anything against it. So, like, you basically try to just, like, again, you know, even though everyone likes to play, is allowed to play whatever they want to, there's still the situation where 1 or 2 champions on each lane are going to be broken. So it's still the same thing, you know. Like,
but the current meta should encourage you to try, like, NA is spanning
yes.
Brand. Like, has anyone in you tried Brand?
When I see Brand,
Syndra bot into Heimer, have you tried it? And Nivea is really good into Heimer, by the
towers. The big tower, you just
when
throw it
Nivea
out of
gets
there,
6,
Maurice.
Heimer can do absolutely nothing against
Have you tried Nocturne mid yet?
Don't play Nocturne into Heimer, that's really awful. But yeah, you got to innovate, Maurice. When do you all get so old?
But Maurice, you think,
anymore?
just to be clear, you think once we get past the innovation that at some point this meta will be figured out and it will stagnate to a certain degree?
I mean, once playoff hits, you know, like, I think it's gonna be just like really just 2 to 3 champions on each role, and then it's gonna be focused again, you know. I think right now everyone pretends they're basically like playing whatever they want to, but in the end, everyone, at least from the LCS teams, is trying to find like this best suited champion for each role, you know. So in the end, it's still gonna be the same thing.
Well, I want to find out. We're going to see 8-12 just around the corner, 8-13 after that. Maybe Rageblade will get nerfed.
I hope.
More strategic diversity. No more Kaisa, no more funneling. Well, we're going to find out. I do want to remind people, send us in your pictures. Whatever they are, pictures of us, pictures of Vedius, pictures of Amazing. Some fun pictures. We need more pictures for the wall. We have one picture of Amazing. We have a picture of Whippo and Youngbug with their horrible mustaches. And we
Photoshops are welcome as well.
Oh, there's a picture of me.
Photoshops.
Oh, that's good.
Mad Photoshops. We've seen your skills. MS Paint. It's all welcome here on the wonderful EUphoria picture
we
wall.
Can't give you RP, like if you need 7 RP for
but
that.
It can be,
skin.
we can't.
We can put it on a wall, which is way better.
Which will live there forever, potentially. We also have this board where we put guest photos that you're welcome to put there as well.
Convenient that Schalke's in 4th.
Yes. This is going to be perfect. And we're going to talk about Schalke momentarily, but before we do, I came up with a game last night while trying to figure out how to get you guys both engaged, and I'm calling it the Weekly BS Quiz. And so what I did is I trolled through every post-game Reddit thread and found the best comments. And so I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a context. So for instance, I could ask for a game, and then I'm going to read you a comment, and you have to tell me what game it's about. Now there might be some blanks in there where you'd have to fill in the blank to figure it out, etc.
Okay.
So there's 4 questions. Whoever gets more points wins.
What
like
do we
the
win?
picture
What
wall,
do we win?
nothing significant.
Nice.
You're the winner of the first
You get the
weekly
high five,
BS
Drakos,
quiz.
all right?
You get a high five. You get a sick high five. Not even a fist bump, a sick high five. So who wants to go first?
Let this
Ladies
go.
first.
Oh,
Wow.
What?
That's
Let's just compare biceps, you know?
This is going down a weird road here. You guys want to take this outside? All right, Vedius, you're going to go first.
Okay.
All right, I got to find which one. Oh, this is some good ones. All right. All right, this is an LCS team. Blank went a little overboard with this new meta bullshit.
Sounds like Rocket.
Blank went Vitality.
No, Fnatic. All right, this is a bot lane duo. XY, so the two champions, is the kind of combo where you first see it and think, WTF, and then you watch it and think, oh, okay, that makes sense.
It's got to be Homer Fiddle.
No.
What?
It's Lux Pike.
Oh, god damn it!
Go for the obvious one. Okay. Question 3. This is a game, matchup between two teams. Okay. Jesus Christ, the blank literally ran to blank's base, Lamau.
That's the HTK Giants. That's the Zir where you ran into base.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That is the backdoor finish.
I cast that game. That's
all right,
fine.
now this is the last one. This one's near and dear to our heart.
Okay.
This is a player's name.
A player's name.
A player's name.
Okay.
And it's something, it might have been a mistake that we made. Okay? Blank does not have an EULCS title.
Blank does not have an... It's amazing!
It is amazing! We actually put on a graphic like ways that you would have won EULCS.
Yes. We put on a graphic that you had one NA and one EU.
I wish
title.
I had.
But you only have 2 NA, right? Do you have even 2 NA?
I have one NA and 0 EU.
We gave him more credit than he deserved.
I gave him way too much. We did get relegated with mysterious monkeys in there,
We
though,
did
which
get
was the
that.
important part of the
vodka
graphic. All right, Amazing, you're up. Vedius has 2 out of 4.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can beat that. Hopefully.
Wait, how'd you get to Worlds twice then? Gauntlet? Gauntlet. It was
Gauntlet once and once. Yeah.
There you go. All right, are you ready, Amazing?
Sure.
So this first one is a game. It was a surprising game. Many people didn't expect it to finish this way. And the Reddit comment, one of the top ones, consists of a chain of comments that sounds like this. What, wet, wit, woot, what?
That sounds like Fnatic SL4.
Yes, it is!
That's how come, you know?
That's right! Oh my God. The next one is an LCS team. All right, and this comment, same old blank, name of the team. Glimpse is a good play, then utterly fucking up macro and losing. Why can't they fix that? I have no idea.
Wait, who lost? Oh, I think it's Splice.
No. I like the effort though. It's Unicorns of Love.
Oh, okay.
Next up, a pro player quote featured in a Reddit comment. You ready?
Yeah.
Which pro player said this after a hype play? You wanker.
It sounds like Gilius.
What? It was a highlight. It's Maxlore.
Oh,
He said it after the Talia play where Senkux literally did all the work and he just rolled in for the triple. You watch the show, Maurice.
That's also a very British thing to say.
That's true. And I'm quoting it. It's phonetically spelled here, courtesy of Reddit. All right, last one. You have 1. You can tie. I don't have a tiebreaker question, so you can just tie if this happens. But if you win, you'll tie with Vedius. This is a pro player, right?
Okay.
Blank is the only player in the world that can miss Fiddle Fear.
Who played Fiddle? Jeez, I actually don't
Think
know.
about who played Fiddle and who lost with Fiddle.
Okay, I don't know what
I'll give you a quick. It's a support.
Okay, we figured that out. Wait, I'm looking at who lost.
I mean, given that's Reddit, I think it could be Spratter, but I don't think he played Fiddle, you know? Is it Spratter?
It's not his name. Think again.
Promiscue.
It's Promiscue. All right, we'll call that a tie for the first weekly PS quiz. Just a reminder, this is stuff we pull from Reddit.
Poor guy.
So we're flaming with the support of the community here. Yeah, poor dude. He did miss that fiddle cue, though. He pushed it on the wrong target. That's a rough life. There you go. So with 2 points apiece, Vedius an amazing tie, and I didn't have an award anyway. I shouldn't have told you that, because then I could have just said, well, it's a tie, so neither of you get anything. So there you go.
That's bad, man. It sucks.
This game happens.
I'm really particularly
What's next on the
disappointed
agenda,
that
I wonder.
Amazing didn't get the Maxlore quote one. It was my highlight of
Really
the
just
week.
doesn't like Maxlore.
Yeah.
That's not.
To be fair, Gilius wasn't a bad guess, though.
No.
Outside of the British accent, I feel like.
that's
it's
Oh
a
yeah,
pro-
true. That gave it away, I think. Or should have. So Gilles speaking with an English accent, like during the game, wouldn't be too surprised.
Wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. I mean, he's got to go take his trash talk to the next level. He does accents now. He picks regional trash talk. All right, so the second big topic of the day is, I'm calling it the state of Schalke, but it's just Schalke 04.
Burning.
Burning.
It was a ship.
Dying.
Sinking.
I mean, they're 1-1. They're tied for 4th place. You can see G2 Vitality Misfits.
You can see they've tilted. That's it.
Yeah. You guys are tied with Fnatic and other great teams like Giants and Rocket.
Yeah.
You're not 0-2. You could have been 0-2. So
I mean, early part of the season doesn't matter as much, but I also feel bad about being 1-1, So it's a two-way street.
All right, but let's talk about you, Maurice.
Yeah,
because you said in an interview, which was a great interview.
Oh yeah, I got some notes here from that.
Shot calling and playing good League of Legends at the same time is hard.
Yeah.
Now I'm paraphrasing, but that's more or less what you said.
Shot calling. You also mentioned that your shot calling style, you're a bit washed up and a bit outdated. So there's a lot you said in that interview. It's a good interview.
But it's just like to lower the expectation. Not everyone thinks I'm really bad.
That's fair.
And it helps me perform on stage.
There's a lot of people who think you're really bad, though. You had a lot of haters from your Fnatic TSM days. There's a lot of amazing haters.
It's actually incredible, I'm a big of a dick. I know that too, I'm really, I'm really offensive to a certain extent. I'm definitely not PC, but I think at least most of what I say is it's in protection of my team to a certain extent. And actually, it rallies the team behind me to a certain extent. So I'm taking the almost the crap that my team is supposed to get, and I'm pulling it onto me. Whether or not I can
just to
handle
clarify, you are the Gilius of Schalke 04.
I was Gilius before Gilius was Gilius. So
OG, oh my God, OG Gilius. It works out so well.
No, but I think it's actually I know it's such an underrated thing nowadays that people are just they don't really think about their teammates as much, And I think actually being out there and standing up for your teammates, whether or not it's obviously my TSM days, even when for example Thorin had this whole rant about I think it was Turtle calling him, I think I'm paraphrasing, I'm gonna call it dumb, but he definitely said another word, but it's just sometimes you just have to be out there and actually address those things, because I think it's really important for the team chemistry and actually really helps the people just feel I don't want to say love, but just taken care of, especially if you have a high stress environment. If you have someone that can actually take that stress off of them to a certain extent, or give them some more fire, I think you should do it. Whether or not it's necessarily good for my branding or good for my Reddit mates, is another thing,
Yeah, let's if you're at home and you're really frustrated with Schalke, feel free to send your criticism to @AmazingXLaw on Twitter. He is now the beacon of all flame for any Schalke team problems. Last season it was the coaching staff. Now it's you who's going to take the burden of all disappointment.
I'm fine with it,
With great power comes great responsibility.
There you go.
My phone broke anyway, so I don't check Twitter anymore.
One thing, so before we talk about this split a little bit more in your role on the team, I want to talk a little bit, get a little bit of a recap for Schalke in spring and what we felt like were the issues for this team then, and then talk a little bit more in the future about what you're solving now, how you feel it's changed. Because so when we look back, Vedius, we had some pretty strong opinions, I think, on Schalke as a team.
Yes.
We were pretty disappointed, I would say, after spring with a pretty lackluster finish for these guys, missing playoffs and all.
There were a couple things.
What do you think was the biggest issue?
So I think they tried really hard to play the game perfectly, which meant that when they didn't have a lead, they weren't very proactive. It's like they were waiting. They waited a little too long, and they weren't go-getters, This
is the most wholesome description of this. Go-getters. Schalke didn't do shit. Yeah. That was the problem with Schalke. Schalke didn't do anything.
I think they also... I think they were afraid to take risks. One of the things that we said is they didn't have an X factor, and the fact that they weren't willing to. Funnily enough, it was Maurice that talked to us about that on the analyst desk. And we just talked a lot about when you think of someone like a Caps is the kind of guy that will go bot lane, dive underneath the turret, and get a solo kill on Yasuo, right? And we kind of expected that from Nukeduck, and he wasn't that. And Chachi kind of used to be that on Unicorns of Love, and he hasn't really been recently. So the fact that we kind of lacked it wasn't a lack of individual star power, the star power was there, but it felt like it was never utilized. And on top of that, the lack of proactivity. And towards the end of the split, it felt like it was getting better. It felt like they got a little bit more YOLO, like they were just willing to take a couple more
Yeah, there was those
gambles.
games where like the pressure I think was really off because they weren't playing for much, and then the last game where they were playing for tiebreakers to potentially make playoffs or whatever, they started sucking again, right?
So his throat closed up, you know?
Yeah. It felt like I've heard the expression before. I don't know if it's still relevant. Maybe Maurice can help, but playing not to lose versus playing to win.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know if that's still a big thing that troubles pro players these days, but I know like back in season 4 and season 5 when the West was really trying to catch up to the LCK and they tried really hard to play the game perfectly, often they would try not to lose rather than actually proactively try to win. And to me, that's kind of a good way to describe Schalke from last split. But with the introduction of Amazing, they seem way more proactive.
I mean, potentially, and Amazing, you were on the broadcast last, but God, this still feels so weird that you were there with us last season. But I mean, do you agree with all the issues that Vedius has described here in terms of what was the issue for Schalke in spring specifically?
I mean, obviously, like, I know a lot of stuff, like, what actually went wrong, you know, but it was mostly that they didn't have the right mentality. They were basically, like, they lacked someone that basically, like, you know, took honestly some pressure off of them because all the players, like, they were really tense throughout the games. They always felt like they had to play not to lose, as you said, you know. And you could feel that, like, with the players too, how they were almost like, you know, tied in the bags, you know, whatever it is, you know, like nothing for them seemed easy going, you know. So it seemed like they were almost like anticipating the loss, more so anticipating a win. I think that in itself was a really bad mindset to be in. I think, or hopefully, I'm able, or I have been able to change a lot of things about it because I'm honestly like really experienced in that kind of manner, you know. So I've had a lot of losses, especially last year was not that positive for me, you know. So I've been at the bottom, you know, like, and I think once you hit rock bottom, you basically can only look upwards anyway. And I think that's the kind of mentality that maybe like the mentality shift that Schalke is looking for too.
I think that's fair. So how many of those issues that we mentioned earlier when you talk about that, people being willing to make plays, that mentality, how many of those issues do you think are solved right now? Like how many of those things do you think are no longer issues for Schalke, or are those things all still kind of work in progress from where you guys are now?
I think a lot of things are still work in progress. It's also about me because like, you know, like in terms of how Schalke operated last split, obviously like this perfectionist style almost, where they try to like, you know, optimize every gameplay, like aspect of their gameplay, and there's still like remnants of that. But also I play into that too, where I try to play the perfect game to a certain extent too. So I don't necessarily take so many risks, you know. I try to take educated risks, you know, where like I'm like at least like for obviously since I played with Mithy, you know, like I think he's someone that does the same thing, like where it's always like, okay, if we do this and they have no counterplay, we do it, you know. But if they have counterplay or it's a 50-50, like we're only gonna do it if it's completely necessary. And I think that's something is still there, and we're still not like necessarily taking risks to the point where we can make or break a game and we're confident doing it. So I think there's still like some things left there, but overall, I think the direction of the team has changed definitely. I think that they feel a lot more comfortable like with one another, like and playing versus other teams. And I think also the whole attitude has changed. Whereas last split, I think they were trying to like almost be friends with the enemy teams, you know, being nice to them, whatever it is, you know. And obviously, Schalke as an esports organization should kind of portray this professionalism. But there's also a limit to it, you know. You should obviously be professional, but you should also like almost have a fire under your butt, you know, where you try to basically destroy the enemy team instead of trying to be friends with them. And I think that especially has changed with me because I'm someone that really wants to destroy everyone and ideally kill the enemy team, you know, like, and it's just something that has to be there. And I think that's what they lacked most, you know. It's not where they just it didn't feel like they were, they weren't really like sensing the urgency, and I think that has changed a lot.
All right, lighting a fire under their butts. Vedius, we saw week 1.
Yes.
We saw a 1-1 week for Schalke, which very well could have been an 0-2 or a 2-0.
Reminded me of my solo queue games.
Yeah.
Because I won a game that I shouldn't have, and I lost the game I definitely should have won.
So, I mean, do you think you've seen any of these things appear from an outside perspective for Schalke? Do they seem like a different team? Are you seeing the same issues appear?
So for me, it felt like game 1, they didn't have a jungler, which hurt them. No, that's a little overcritical. That's obviously overcritical. I do think that EUphoria came onto the stage quite well prepared and just well equipped in general. And I do want to give credit to Cold and Exile.
Yeah, the duo of Trundle and Yasuo, they played really well.
And I think that they punished what felt like an over-eagerness to an extent of Amazing and Nukeduck trying to shut Exile down on the Yasuo. But then in game 2, it just felt like that they had a very clear game plan. I really liked their draft. At first, I was like, ooh, they're not invading. They're not taking the same approach as Misfits. Is this really going to work? But then they were like, yeah, we just have to keep killing caps and it'll work. They have no pressure anywhere else. And it just felt like that they recognized, they had a good awareness, they played towards their win conditions, and then they messed up, right? Which is part of the development thing where they definitely will not make that mistake ever again. It's one of those situations where you now get to 20 minutes, and as a team, just like, do you guys remember when that Baron was stolen at 20ty minutes? Do we have a ward on Baron?
They're like, yeah, guys, we warded Baron. It's like, guys, they're taking our tier 2 bot right now. Like, dang it, how can we never get it right?
That would be funny. But I felt like that we saw a much improved Schalke in that they came with a game plan, they executed the game plan. There was a dumb mistake, which was dumb, but overall, in terms of the quality of League of Legends, it was good. And so I feel like Schalke is playing pretty well.
Yeah, so looking forward, I mean, Maurice, talk to me about those first 2 games and how the team felt after them. I mean, we kind of saw how they unfolded. You even said in the interview after the first game, like how weird it was for the first time. You're like encountering nerves on stage, made humble on the LCS stage after so much time away. Like, what changed between game 1 and game 2 for you guys? And now how are you feeling looking forward into week 2?
I think the difference between game 1 and game 2 is just the fact that I actually got comfortable on stage. You know, like after the first game, like I really realized that I cannot play this way. I cannot like basically rely on my teammates to call for me, because that's what I did in game 1. I was almost like hesitant to do plays after I failed early. And I think game 2, I came in like a lot more like willing to just analyze.
Sit in a bush and wait for caps to come to blue.
analyze what I had to do, and I was like a lot more confident in myself. And I think that's overall the team state too. You know, I think like some players are emotional leaders, some players are like you know, like in-game leaders, whatever it is. And I think especially when I'm confident, when I'm like emotionally in a way like where like I'm basically trying to get in the team ahead, you know, by lighting that fire instead of like being passive and almost being hesitant to do stuff. I think it really like puts the team in the right direction. I think for game 2, we felt a lot more comfortable, and we've also like tried to practice the way that we did play on stage too afterwards, you know. And I think that's basically something we now realize that basically before, like especially in preseason, we almost like play to play in some scrims where we like try to trash the enemy in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know. But on the LCS stage, that's not going to happen, you know. So we actually just like came in with a more clear game plan, as you said, you know. And I think that's basically what we want to do come forward, where we come into every game with a game plan and we actually try to execute it instead of relying on individual mechanics.
So now I want to talk a little bit more about the future, because you're talking about this slow improvement, steadily, things are coming together. So what are the ambitions of the team? Because look, after last season, we didn't really have high expectations.
Slept the guy that made this list.
For Schalke. This was me, Deficio, and Maxlor that put the preseason tier list together. And Schalke are clearly in C, and I don't know if you can tell, but that's not a good letter. That's D is the lowest you can get.
That's a weird alphabet, though.
I mean, the S, it's a tier list. It's a little bit different. You could be in D tier if we didn't put S. This is a positive tier list. So, as a C tier team, maybe not anymore after a 1-1 week to start.
I'm surprised about a number of these things, but continue.
We'll update the tier list at some point in the future. Maybe Deficio won't be here and you'll get invited to help again.
I'm just surprised because he was a big advocate for Vitality. And he says this was their meta, and he said this is when they were going to perform. So I'm surprised that he wouldn't put them in A. Yeah, especially seeing as this meta is all about early game and snowballing, and he put G2 there, and I figured that he would put Vitality there.
He also put Splice there when it doesn't necessarily seem like Splice's meta, but I guess that was kind of the success of last season. But so talk to me, because Schalke were going to be the super team. They were going to look great last season. They were going to bring it all together, and it fell apart. We've already mentioned that. So what are the ambitions now? Is it sky high for Schalke? Is it like we're making it to Worlds, we're going to win LCS, or is it like we're going to get better?
I mean, putting a clear number on it and saying we're going to be first place or second place is kind of like almost useless, because if you don't reach that goal, you're going to be like really disappointed. I think for us, it's just really...
It would be good, though, if you were like the guy trying to get all the flame for the team, if you made bold statements.
No, but for us, it's just important to stay together and stay as a unit. I don't want to make statements for the team, because I think like sometimes it can actually backfire. I don't want to put pressure on the people. I think for us, it's just like like if we put in the work and we happen to be a C team at the end of the split, it just happens to be that way. If we put in the work and we happen to be an S tier team at the end of the split, we're happy with that too. You know, it's all about all of the process. I don't want to mean like in saying trust the process, but in the end, for us it's just like we play and we win, or we play and we lose. You know, like it's all about improvement and just seeing what happens. You know,
Trust the process. Make a
Listen,
few
Drakos.
fake Twitter accounts.
yeah, that's the next part.
It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll put that on a poster on your wall.
That can be the
along
quote.
with your UGG boots and your pumpkin spice lattes. Deficio.
just- really?
I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm sorry. So, Maurice, it sounds like you're just focusing. You're not looking at anything else around you. It's mostly just Schalke in a vacuum. Like, how does Schalke become better? Not how do we become number one in LCS? How do we become number one in the world? It's just how do we as a team improve week to week? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, in the end, it's still like how do we become the best team possible, and how can we become like number one in the world, ideally, you know. But it's also about like just understanding that if it's not going to happen like right now, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen if it's supposed to happen, you know. That's how I see it.
Makes sense.
All right. Well, let's talk about next week, because next week you play G2 and Roccat. Day 1 G2, day 2 Roccat. How you feeling? How you
week
feeling,
for
Maurice?
you.
How you feel about that schedule?
Tough week.
Tough week.
Tough
Tough
week.
Roccat next week.
I think their game. I mean, if you only look at their game 1, right, you're like Roccat, but they look better in game 2.
I mean, I don't think that Rocket is bad. I just don't think that they have the individual talent to actually keep up with the top teams.
I agree.
And I think that's basically holding them back. You know,
I mean, I agree to a certain degree, but I also think that like if you're basing that on the example from their first game, Memento literally hinted.
No, but to be fair, because one of my big things, I was a big advocate for Roccat last split.
Yep.
I felt like they actually have a very good idea very often of what they're supposed to be doing, and they often fail to execute.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to individual talent. And they're not bad players, it's just on a relative scale. I do agree with Maurice, they can't quite compete with a lot of the top teams. Saying that, I did say on PGL that they would beat Vitality. I will stick with that.
they will beat Vitality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Ambitious, I know, but we'll see how that
Deficio
pans
made you
out.
shake on that.
He
That's why you
did.
have to stick
That's why I
with
have
it,
to
isn't it?
stick with it. But when it happens, it'll be sweet justice, because when Deficio was forced to bet on H2K last split,
They won.
and then they won, I'm just like, I'm relying on
You're
that.
hoping that you get your moment too
That's what
from
I'm
the
hoping.
EUphoria
Anyway,
predictions.
but yes, I think G2 will beat Schalke, and then depending on how day 1's performance goes, depends very much on day 2.
I think Schalke will probably beat Roccat. But okay, so amazing. Do you think Schalke's going to beat G2? That seems like the toughest competitor.
We should beat them. We should beat them. That's how I see it. We should beat them.
All right. Well, in the spirit of EUphoria, you want to put a little,
if
something
I have
on
to-
that? You want to put a little wager?
If I have to, I don't mind setting
All
up for
right.
my team. Yeah.
Well, in the spirit of doing things embarrassing, this week's bet is champion dances,
Okay.
the classic. So, Vedius, you are now rooting in the favor of G2. Amazing, you're rooting in the favor of Schalke. Loser has to do a champion dance of the other person's choice and put it on social media.
Just don't give me any of that weep stuff, you know?
None of the weak stuff. So you don't want to do Ari, you don't want to do Cinder.
That's where you draw the line, the weep stuff. We could have gotten like the old sleigh bell Katarina dance, you know, like you could literally.
to be fair, that would be a better look for me than the weep stuff, you know? Like, just saying. But yeah, no weep stuff, and I'm fine. I'll do it.
You'll do it? No other assistance needed.
Like, that's the only thing I need.
Do you have a champion in mind that you would want me to dance?
No, don't. I mean, let's get people involved.
No,
Let's
but-
ask the world
Because the
what they
irony
want.
is you could get me to do the fiddlesticks dance.
What is?
I don't even know.
No. I think Nunu is a good look for you.
The Nunu
That's an easy
dance.
one.
The
Yeah,
Nunu dance is so simple. You get into something embarrassingly
but it has to be in
complicated.
a club too, you know. Like if he does it in the
That's like my go-to club style. I don't know.
if he does it in the club, I'm actually
Like, when I go to the club, Maurice, it's like the sprinkler, you know, the lawnmower,
the dices.
the shopping trolley.
Hitting them with the classics, the lawnmower especially. Okay, but the thing is this. I
This
thought,
is why Deficio doesn't let me on the
I was gonna say, it's like you're ruining the bet by being excited about dancing. You're supposed to be embarrassed. All right, G2
I'm down.
versus Schalke. That is game 3 of day 1 this Friday on the EULCS. Vedius on the side of G2. Amazing, unsurprisingly, on the side of Schalke. Loser, after the game, let's say next day, in case there's any sore feelings.
I'll give you, because this is week 2, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would say before week 3.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, it's fine.
And then you got plenty of time.
Before Tuesday, so that we can get a clip of it on next episode.
That would be good.
For the people.
And it'll be on Schalke Esports Twitter.
There you go. Amazing, fulfilling his duty, potentially. Or it'll be Vedius.
No.
All right, team bet. And you have to pick the champion within the day of the game.
Sure, at the end
what
of the
the
day.
result
Okay.
is going.
That works.
All right, there's your bet. So, you think,
Good luck.
Vedius, so you're predicting a 1-1 or an 0-2 week for Schalke?
Off the top of my head, I would say 1-1, but it depends very much on how day 1 goes.
Because you think Rocket's going to be
'Cause I
vitality
think
and be an
Rocket could
unstoppable
be
force.
Yes.
Maurice, 2-0, you feel like?
It has to be. If it's not 1-1, you know, it cannot be 1-1. It's 2-0 or 0-2.
But I could see you beating G2 and losing to Rocket. I could see that.
That'd
be par for
really
the
troll,
course.
you know? I'd rather not do that, you know?
I mean, I'm sure, when we're looking at like top teams in Europe, ideally that's not what we want. But we had a competitive last split, because
Everyone was good or everyone was bad?
I think everyone was bad, personally.
I agree.
I think everyone was bad. But it was fun to watch. And we did have some really fun ups. Like, what impressed me the most, my favorite thing is the fact that Misfits 2-0'd Fnatic. And then
didn't make playoffs?
They went 0-2.
God.
They went 0-2 versus Rocket. And Rocket didn't just beat them, they stomped them
that was
twice.
Like almost perfect game.
Yeah, like they literally stomped them. So, yeah, I think that's why I am not
You're hesitant.
entirely
You're
confident.
hesitant.
Yeah, I'm hesitant, exactly.
I mean, you have to make a prediction at some point on broadcast though to win the prediction
But I
game.
usually day 2 predictions I always make at the end of day 1.
Fair.
But I do think that Schalke should be the favorites versus Rocket. They should be on paper, they should be the favorites.
All right. Well, our last thing to do today is get in some of these Twitter questions. I want to say thank you ahead of time to everyone who put in a Twitter question that was for either talking about Schalke or talking about funneling comps. There were a ton of questions about funneling comps, and I hope we answered some of them via our discussion there. Some of these questions, though, they're a little more targeted. And we'll start. Do you want to start with the totally out there question, or do you want to start with the more career focused question?
We should start with very question. I
Yeah,
think.
so I have a question from Andy Day at Riot Vedius, and he wants to know who plays Nocturne better. Now, he doesn't specify between whom, so I'm assuming
Well,
it's
you're in
between
Diamond now?
me and
I'm a
Amazing.
Diamond. I went from Plat 5 to Diamond 5 in a week.
How much
with
did you pay
Nocturne
Medic?
mids. I duoed with Deficio.
Oh,
Deficio played Zyra support and finished that champion.
We went.
wait, but what elo is he?
He's now Plat 1. We need to finish his. He's like Plat 1,
Dude,
40 LP or
I
something.
think this meta diversity actually is really in your favor.
Someone picks
I could not-
Karthus mid, you're like, sure, I'll one-shot you. And the level 4 Nunu walks to your lane, you're like,
But
okay.
let's answer the question, right? So I would like you, Drakos, to ask me or us a variety of Nocturne-related questions.
Sure.
And see who understands the champion better.
Dude,
Okay.
what do I need to understand? Either I kill the enemy or he kills me.
Okay,
you know?
yeah.
Let's go.
Let's start. We'll start with Amazing. What does Nocturne's alt do?
What does it do?
Yeah, what does it
me.
do?
You just basically dash to the enemy and you obviously make them nearsighted, you know?
Yeah, cool. That's good. I like that.
Nearsighted for 6
Hold
seconds.
Hold on, sir. You'll get your chance.
He
All right.
didn't specify like
No, that's fine. I feel like that's a fine answer.
Very well.
Vedius, what is this passive called? What does it do? And what are the specific interactions?
Actually no.
Yeah, you do
not know what his passive is
It's like
called.
it's like Jeopardy. It's like Jeopardy. Vedius,
What his passive is called.
the answer passive is not acceptable.
Are you sure it's not P? I know his passive, obviously, is an empowered auto attack that
Yes.
does an AoE damage that also heals him. And for every auto he does, it is reduced by 1 second on monsters and minions and 2 seconds on champions.
That's pretty good. You don't know what it's called, though.
I do not know what it's called.
What is Umber Blades?
Yes.
Why did I think it was Umbral Trespass? Because that's his...
That's Kane's ult.
That's canceled.
I kept thinking it was Umbral something. God damn it.
That's it. That's quick to 0, dude.
Whoa, I'm gonna give you one more. Amazing. How much Nocturne have you played?
when is this going to air?
How much across your entire solo queue history? We'll keep it out of
okay, I'm just saying, I have a 100% win rate in competitive with Nocturne, you know?
Dang.
That's all I'm saying. Last game I played Nocturne competitively was in Season 4 against Rocket. I kind of picked Pantheon with it. I played against Vander and Drakos.
Dang,
and
that's
I
good.
carried the game.
And what ELO are you?
We're not going to talk about it.
Were he is higher elo than me.
Are you?
He is a higher elo than me.
I'm a stable.
Are you higher than Vedius?
He is.
I'm a
100%.
stable Diamond 1.
It's
respectable.
All right, ooh, worrying trend.
He's a pro player. He's a busy
Yeah,
man.
that's fair.
I try to log in to speak to him on the client, and he's just never logged in anymore.
He ignores you.
So it's because he's scrimming on a secret account, I guess.
Wow, you can't reveal what? Wow, putting it out there now. They know he
You
has a
heard of
secret account.
TR, dude?
Yeah, that's true. Vedius, how many games of Nocturne have you played across your entire career?
My career,
Your entire League of Legends solo queue career?
probably around 500.
Okay, and what ELO are you?
This season,
This season, yes, because
Diamond 5. My peak is Master Tier 300 LP.
all right, I'll let
We're
the
talking about the past, you know? If I was rank 1 at some point, you know?
Wait, really?
Yeah, obviously.
What season was this?
Season 5.
That was the season I was Master Tier 300 LP.
Yeah, so you know how easy it was?
You know Nocturne better. I know that, but I still think he's probably a better.
No,
But okay, no, but my question is,
This is a lot.
Okay,
We can't go on this.
yeah, okay,
This is
let's
the question that you asked.
Yeah,
I don't want to spend any more time on this.
but there's the final thing is, I will ask you this, all right?
Do you queue during the ult?
Yeah, so how do you maximize damage on your ult?
You just queue just before you land, you know?
So there is very specific timing. I did this multiple times in training.
It always
tool.
works.
It doesn't always work because the speed of the projectile of your Q is slower than the speed of your ult. So if you Q at the start, the Q will not actually hit them at the
obviously,
same time.
especially if there's a little range between the two parties, you know, queuing at the start is not the smartest idea, you know? Just saying.
But the way to maximize damage on your ult is, it's like a cop-out answer, is you actually hit them with Q first and then you ult. Because it's pretty impossible, I've tried multiple times, to land the Q as you're hitting the ult, only
To
because...
get the 80
I mean, it's
steroid.
only if you're Diamond 5.
no, but it's only because the missile speed, your ult is faster than your Q is, so even when you throw the Q out, you're always going to hit
All right.
the ult first.
Wonderful.
There you go.
Amazing wins because he's higher ELO than you. That's how it works. Sorry, dude. I just don't think that the Silver 3 guy who's played a million Nocturne games is probably in this discussion either. So, apologies to everyone who asked a real question that we just spent 4 minutes talking about Vedius' question. The next one is from at Nintendo at Aether on Earth, AETHER on Earth. For amazing, look back at your career as a pro player. Which team do you think had the most potential to win something internationally?
I think in terms of potential, I think Origin had a lot of potential, but I think obviously like there were a lot of things going wrong and it didn't quite work out. In terms of actual performance, though, internationally, I think the TSM roster that I was on was actually better.
Can you remind people who was actually on that roster?
It's Turtle, Lustboy, Dyrus, and Bjergsen. And I think at the time when we played at Season 4 Worlds, you know, that's why I was so adamant about it when like I had this interview with Thorin, you know, like this Summoning Inside episode, you know, where people called me delusion afterwards, you know. It's just, when we played scrims, like we're improving like daily, incredibly fast, you know, because we had Reggie who was basically like pounding some knowledge into us, you know, almost, you know. But it was such an energetic roster that was actually trying to like win every scrim almost and trying to play as well or perfect as possible. And I think in terms of like what we actually brought to the table when we played against Samsung White, you know, was actually a pretty high level of gameplay because when we faced them, we're not supposed to win a game. We're supposed to be stomped every game, but we had the chance to win. Like honestly, we won one game that they kind of like trolled, but whatever it is, we had the chance to win game 1. We had the chance to win game 4. You know, it's just like they didn't stomp us as much as they, for example, stamped Samsung Blue afterwards. So for me, like that roster in itself had so much like just fulfilled potential already, whereas the original roster still had like something to come. You know, if we had another year playing together with Peke. Or even with Power Evil, but Peke actually like, you know, really backing him up.
So like Origin could have been a better team, but
Yes.
the team that was most likely to actually win something in the state that they were when they were competing was the TSM Season 4
Yeah,
roster.
that's how I see it.
Makes sense. The last question, this one's a little bit more biting. It's from G2 Darkoplax at Darkoplax, frequent asker of aggressive questions on our podcast. Also, my question for Amazing. Isn't he a little bit arrogant and overconfident for his knowledge skills? Like, he's talking about the junglers like they are hot, brain dead, and he's the Lord Savior coming in. Do you feel like you have a big ego or like you're arrogant, Amazing? I mean, this is kind of a trap question, right? Because if you had an ego...
How's that even a question?
It's like, yes, I have an ego. Well, dang.
No, but it's like, okay, I know that I'm cocky, I know I have a big ego, and I'm arrogant. You know, there's no point talking around it, and I don't mind like being that person, because I think like so many people are afraid nowadays of actually being themselves that like I don't mind being like this guy that is actually just like completely out of his mind, maybe to a certain extent, you know.
But you don't wear Zoe wigs on stage. Until you get to that point, you still seem pretty rational.
Okay, so, but no, I mean, I think a lot of people like kind of have a weird idea of like how I am as a person, like between like, you know, like on let's say like once the show ends to a certain extent. And I think a lot of people also have a wrong idea of me as a player, because even though I may not have ever been like the greatest individual player, besides like maybe my season 4 time, I'm still incredibly knowledgeable in terms of like game, about the game, you know. So for me, I can actually like facilitate a lot of knowledge towards the team and make them efficient within the game, you know. Whether or not I can actually do it efficiently every time is another question, because obviously my MM stint has shown I cannot do it. But what I can do is actually like when I have good players and like or great players that actually have like issues shot calling or have issues being like, you know, in the moment, I can keep them there. And I think that's where like obviously I as a player come in, and I think that's why I fit so well in the Schalke roster too.
I will also say that even though having played many games with Mr. Stuckenschneider, while he is arrogant and has an ego, he does also have a lot of respect for many other players.
Including you and your
not me. But he, it's not something that he's super forward and open about, but he is like, he does respect his opposition, and he doesn't, you know, and he does recognize good players when he sees them. And so he's not a complete asshole. He did.
Strong praise. Thank you. Because the other side of that coin is he also recognizes morons when he sees them.
He does also.
Pretty aggressively.
And when he feels like he sees an idiot, he is not afraid to say, I think you are bad at League of Legends, and you are an idiot. But that's just Maurice. He's an extra bit of spice in your cup of tea. Okay. Some people like it, some people don't.
Put that on a banner so we can put that on a wall. Maurice Amazing Stuckenschneider, the little bit of extra spice in your cup of tea. Get the worst picture of him you can possibly find.
I already know which one. I already know which one. I can send it
So
to you.
let us know. Good Photoshop. Paint is also acceptable. That's going to do it here for Season 2, Episode 2 of the EUphoria Podcast. If you have any suggestions for photos on the wall and you want to share with us, you of course can tweet at me, at Daniel Drakos, or at Deficio Lol to Deficio, even though he's not here. He's sure to get a lot. And in the future, in the past we've used hashtag Euphoria. Turns out, not a great podcast tweet, because it just gets full of other stuff. People, turns out, get euphoric about many things that aren't EULCS, which is odd, I know, very strange. So the new hashtag is hashtag EUphoria Podcast. Share anything you want with us, suggestions for bets, pictures for the wall, really hot takes for next week, ideas for games, share everything there. Until then, thank you to all those people watching on YouTube, those listening on SoundCloud and iTunes. And we're going to find out who gets to
wave
dance.
to the people on SoundCloud?
Wave to the people on SoundCloud, boys. Wave to the people on SoundCloud. That's how it's going to go. And that's going to do it for us.